This is one of the big ones, one of the really big ones, and more than any other book, I think this has provoked more questions from people about if I've read it, what I think of it, and if I plan to read it. I was kind of putting it off because it is a daunting undertaking to read it, and I had previously read the first two books, really the first half of Book of the New Sun, Shadow of the Torturer, and Claw of the Conciliator, and so I knew what was in store for me, and I knew how intense of a reading experience it is. And I wanted this to cap off the 100-book challenge, felt that this would be a fitting final book. It ended up being a final 2 books because I went on to read Urth of the New Sun, the coda or follow-up 5th book or 2nd book. And of course, there are the Long Sun and Short Sun books. But Book of the New Sun, the first 4 that were written as a single book and then broken up into individual books. Drum roll, what do I think? I think a lot of things. I feel a lot of things. Am I seized with the passion of the Wolfe? Not so much. I have really deeply mixed feelings and pretty intense feelings on both sides of the scales, which I think just inevitably is going to be the case. I don't think that you can read Book of the New Sun and not come away with it with some strong feeling about it because it's such a singular and such a difficult piece of lit. I guess we'll start with the literary tone or the literary influences. And on paper, Book of the New Sun should be like straight to the pineal gland bliss for me because it combines a lot of my favorite authors and a lot of influences in lit that I really gravitate towards and resonate with. The biggest influence is Jack Vance in his Dying Urth stories. The setting, the feel, the aesthetics, a lot of the character kind of dynamics are drawn in direct reference to the Dying Urth. He draws largely upon scripture and Kafka and Herman Melville, and it's a really intense blending of all of these elements to create something that feels pretty otherworldly. Wolfe was a classicist and a Catholic. And the books are suffused with a lot of archaic terminology as well as neologisms that combine with a really ambiguous and enigmatic narrative style into something that just isn't quite to my taste. And it's too bad because all of those things, if they really harmonized and if they were synthesized into something that was coherent, I think would be the ultimate high for me. But there's a stylistic flourish and a set of authorial decisions that Wolfe made that alienate me, that I don't resonate with, and that distances me from my experience of reading. Constantly puts a gap between me and the text. On top of being externally referential to history and other works of lit, it's also internally labyrinthine in its reference. This is one of the major things that people love about Book of the New Sun, is that there are seemingly unlimited layers of interpretation that you can bring to this network of self-reference in it. And everything that Wolfe does, he's hiding his hand, always. It's always set up to something, to some payoff that comes only much later, and when it does come, it comes with a flourish of like misdirection. And as a reader, you're expected to suspend your desire for resolution indefinitely. And for me personally, by the time I got to the end of it, I was so exhausted by this constant refrain of having my expectations set up or having questions posed to me or being plunged into the heart of some mystery, and then not really having my curiosity satisfied really kind of at all. That just pissed me off. There is a whole class of diehard reader for Book of the New Sun for whom this is the great selling point of nothing is spoon-fed to you, nothing is explained, and it's all there for you to interpret and research and perform this exegesis upon. Ultimately, I feel that I did get the big picture and the broad strokes, and I can see all the fine brushwork. I can see all the little mysteries and trailing ends and loose threads that are there to be tied up that would clarify an otherwise completely or nearly completely mystifying narrative, and I'm sure deepen my appreciation of it and lend it alternative meanings. And by the time I finished Urth of the New Sun, I just did not give a shit, is the thing. That's my big note, is that it's a technically astonishing piece of literature, and that I can see the big puzzle. And I just got really sick of puzzles. I just got sick of feeling teased and toyed with. I think my reaction would be different and much more positive if I really liked Wolfe's writing style in this, but I really kind of don't. I think only about half of the book is straightforward narrative, and the rest of it is a mixture of fable and allegory and foreshadowing. So Wolfe is always shunting you off the path that's already narrow and hard to follow. I get the impression that for a lot of readers, this is also a plus. It's like playing tag with someone in the woods, and you can never quite reach out and touch Wolfe. I just personally don't really like that style, and as I was reading it, I felt like he was not earning that level of dedication in me that I would sit down and contemplate big chunks of philosophical exposition with him, or that I would follow him along on these flights of narrative indulgence. If you really resonate with Wolfe's writing style and the notion of dissecting this big Byzantine, I was about to say overly complicated, but maybe not overly complicated, religious allegory appeals to you, if that sounds fun, and you like the experience of reading it, then I think that these would be great. But if you read Shadow of the Torturer and you are feeling about it how I am describing how I felt about Book of the New Sun, I wouldn't expect the picture to change all that much. The parts of Book of the New Sun that I really loved were the parts where Wolfe kind of took off the wizard's cap and just wrote relatively straightforward bits of narrative. There are aliens in it that are just superb, and there are pieces of action that are great. A lot of the like science fantasy stuff is amazing. The sense of place and atmosphere at times can be really affecting and really effective. And you do get strong flavors of Jack Vance and dark fantasy and Elric and all this. And this is a flavor that I really like. The parts of it that I don't love so much are all the juggling and the narrative gymnastics and the literary stuntsmanship. I'm sorry if that is too pejorative for you, but that was my feeling about it, was that it was Wolfe showing off his abilities as a writer, which are prodigious, but also are just a little too performative at parts for me. I also don't really jive so much with the really strong Catholic overtones and his apology for monarchism. He was a monarchist. The characters I didn't think were great. Severian, I just don't find that interesting of a protagonist. I know that there's some subtle, unreliable narration that happens that's not really spoiling anything. In a lot of ways, it wears its sword and sorcery influences on its sleeve, and one of the ways that it does this is that the sexual relations in the book are a little hair-raising, sometimes a lot hair-raising, and that part of it made me roll my eyes. A lot of it feels like penthouse letters and teen wish fulfillment. And this is something that it gets criticized for a lot. And I've seen people go to bat for it by saying, clearly it's just Severian, you fool. Wolfe has nothing to do with it. I don't know. I'm agnostic on that front. I can see it going either way. But it's in there. I think it will make it unpleasant for a lot of readers. I'm talking mostly about the negatives, but there were a lot of positives, and my feelings genuinely are mixed. I don't hate the book. Sometimes I loved the book. Other times I did just get fed up and wanted to put it down. A lot of people say that you have to reread it a couple of times to really get the full picture. That might be the case, but again, I'm just not inspired to do it. I just don't care enough, and I feel that I paid my dues. I feel I understand enough of it to know what kind of juice I'm going to get from that squeeze, and it's not a flavor of juice that I really savor. I think I like all of the things that influenced it more than I like it, especially Jack Vance. I haven't really talked about the plot, semi by accident, but also I think we all know about Book of the New Sun, and if you don't, it's like a picaresque fantasy, dying Earth fantasy, far future. Is there magic? Is there not magic? That is a severely reductive nutshell. It is one that'll stick with me for a while, but I'm content to have read it the one time and set it aside and move on. But I would say read Shadow of the Torturer, and if you love it, then keep reading because you're going to get a lot more that is like it. Of the 4 books, the middle 2 I think are the best. I think the highs of Book of the New Sun are in Claw of the Conciliator, but Sword of the Lictor worked the best as like a standalone novel to me. I think I had the most fun reading that one. If you want my thoughts about the individual books, I recorded videos for each of them on my Patreon, as I record videos for every book that I read, and I talk myself to death on those. So you can get more detailed thoughts. If you're curious, it's $5, pays for everything. Thanks for watching.